Thank you to all my channel members, including my fan appreciation level members and my contributor level members, for helping support the YouTube channel.
Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my book review of the book Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the novelization by Karen Traviss. I am a big fan of the Clone Wars movie and TV show. A lot of it is for nostalgia's sake, but also I just really enjoyed it. The Clone Wars movie was the first Star Wars movie I saw in theaters back in 2008. I was too young to go see the prequels in theaters, or so my parents said. But I went, to see the Clone Wars movie in 2008 with my dad, and I loved the movie. And I watched the TV show, not all the episodes right when they came out, but most of them right when they came out. Several of them live, some of them on reruns on Saturdays. So I'm a big fan of the Clone Wars. And so I was really excited to get to this book. In fact, I had forgotten that this book was on my list, so I had to add it real quick because I'm trying to 100% the EU. And so I got a copy of the book and I was ready to read it. And I was like, great, it's like 250 pages. I can read that in an evening, which I did. But I was ready to read this and I was excited for the nostalgia. And I was hoping that this would be a top tier Karen Traviss book for me. Because I've read all her other books and she's not my favorite Star Wars author, but she's had some good books. So I was really hopeful. Unfortunately, that hope was entirely ill-founded because I think Karen Traviss makes every single wrong move with this novelization. There are certain things that a novelization needs, and Karen Traviss misses most of them. There are certain things that a novelization should try, and she tries some of them in the wrong way. And so it is such an ill-conceived novelization. I really wish I had been in the editor's room to talk with the editors when this book was coming out, because I think that they royally messed up on this one, which I normally am very nice to the authors. But what was Lucasfilm, Del Rey, and the team involved thinking with this book? Let me explain. A novelization is supposed to basically tell the story of the movie. It's supposed to basically adapt the screenplay and add some context, add the characters' inner dialogue, add some extra scenes, and make you feel like you're getting the story with a little added to it. That's what a good novelization does. And some of those things Karen Traviss does. For example, we get into a lot of the characters' heads. Obi-Wan, Anakin, Dooku, Ventress, Palpatine, all of those characters, Jabba the Hutt, we get into those characters' heads a lot. So Karen Traviss does a very good job of doing that part of the book. She also, in a general story sense, in terms of getting us from Christophsis to Teth to Tatooine, she at least tells the general story. But there are entire scenes missing from the book. And sometimes when you're doing a novelization, a scene wasn't in the original draft of the screenplay that the author's given and is in a was put in last minute in reshoots, and so the author didn't have that, so they couldn't include it in the novelization. That happens. Sometimes even two scenes happen. There's like a half dozen, or maybe even closer to a dozen scenes cut from this, and the movie was already really short. If you have a 3-hour movie with a ridiculously long screenplay, cuts are understandable. This movie was 94 minutes. So it's not like they had a ton that was necessary to cut, because they could have kept in all the scenes from the movie and added a lot to it, and it still would have still been pretty short. But there's so many scenes cut from here. For example, Obi-Wan negotiating with General Loathsome on Christophsis is entirely cut. You see a clone talking to another clone about it kind of after it happens. The entire sequence of Admiral Yularen being called by Yoda to send Ahsoka out, entirely cut. The sequence of Yoda and Mace Windu talking with a clone scout trooper is entirely cut. A sequence with Padme going to meet Zero the Hutt is entirely cut. The entire sequence of her being rescued by C-3PO is entirely cut. There's other scenes I could go on about, but there's entire scenes here that are just completely cut out of the book. Like, there's no explanation to what happens to Padme. When you read the end. If you just read this book, didn't watch the movie, you would think that Padme ends it being captured by Zero the Hutt. There is no resolution to her character arc. There's an entire scene with Ahsoka with the Magna Guards that's completely cut. There are entire sequences here that are cut for no obvious reason, and it makes no sense. And again, it's a 250-page book. It's really short. This is not like comics where you're limited to you only get this many panes that they'll let you do. She could have made this 350, 400 pages long. She could have added a lot more, and she could have cut the stuff she added. You want to add new stuff to a story, but you do not want to detract from the actual movie story. You don't want to detract from it, and this book detracts from it. It commits the novelization cardinal sin. Secondly, it doesn't just cut scenes, but the scenes that are from the movie that are present are altered significantly. When you tell a scene from a movie, extra lines of dialogue are expected and encouraged because you can add in more characters, you can tell it from different perspectives, you can include more, especially you can add characters' inner thoughts and dialogue. In this book, though, the dialogue itself that is from the movie scenes is entirely changed. It is very much designed to be serious, and it some of the humorous lines and the fun innocence of the movie is present, but the majority of the silliness, the kid-like wonder, the majority of the lines of dialogue that make it feel like it's from the Clone Wars TV show are entirely cut or rechanged to be dialogue that is Karen Traviss style dialogue. So it doesn't even the scenes that are present aren't even faithful to the movie either. And especially where this was felt the most was in Ahsoka's conversations. Her conversations with Anakin and her conversations with Rex just feel totally different. Rex's inner monologue does not feel like the inner monologue of a Clone Wars character. It feels like the inner monologue of, say, a clone trooper in Karen Travis's, her Clone Wars era books, the Order 66 book, the Republic Commando books. It absolutely would fit in there. Does not fit in the Clone Wars movie, does not fit in the Clone Wars TV show. And so she fundamentally changes not only the dialogue itself, but the tone of the story. And I understand an element of this is an adult novel, you want to, reach an adult audience. But to fundamentally change the story hinders the whole point of doing the novelization. And then, as if all that stuff wasn't enough, the stuff that she adds is only mixed bag. The stuff she adds with Dooku, Ventress, and Jabba I thought was pretty cool. Now, was it worth losing the other stuff that we lost? No, but if the everything else had been there the way it should have been, and you added the Dooku, Ventress, and Jabba the Hutt stuff, I would have been pretty happy with it. I would have said that's good. Those are good additions to make. So at the beginning of the book, I was pretty happy because the additions that are made at the beginning, I thought, add to the story. But then you also have the additions of the sequences with Rex, and you get to know Rex and the 6 clone troopers that are with him on Teth, and you really get to know them well, and you see their perspective, and you see a lot of extra stuff with them. And of course, it's Karen Traviss. She likes troops, she likes soldiers, the military stuff, so I understand why she did it. But again, her focus on that not only detracted from the other parts of the story, but it added this tone that did not fit the story at all. And sometimes when I'm reading a novelization, I'll consider putting on the soundtrack in the background, and I didn't do that with this book at all because the movie soundtrack would not have fit because the movie soundtrack is much more lighthearted and colorful and bombastic, and her story is so much more serious. So, man, I wanted to like this book, and there's other books that I've read. At least I thought her book No Prisoners was fine. At least it was passable. It did not feel like the Clone Wars that much, but it was passable. This book is not passable. It does not earn a passing grade. And I loved Wild Space that Karen Miller did, another author. Karen Miller did this book, and it feels right in with the Clone Wars. It fits perfectly with the movies, the prequel movies, the Clone Wars movie, and the Clone Wars TV show. But this novelization just doesn't do it. And I hate being so negative because I want to be a positive reviewer, talk about what I like. But this is the wrong way to do novelizations, in my opinion. And Karen Travis, I can't fault her personally for all the decisions. I actually fault the editorial staff. They should have known that she would do something like this, and they should have picked someone else. If Karen Miller had done the novelization, I think that it would have worked much better. They should have given Karen Travis another project to work on. They should have given her another Republic Commando novel or let her do an original book that has nothing to do with the TV show or movie. But this was a swing and a miss from as a novelization perspective. In fact, I believe this is my least favorite of the novelizations. So that is my review of Star Wars: The Clone Wars novelization by Karen Travis. If you've read this book, let me know your thoughts. Did you dislike it like I did? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.